Hey, man. How's it going?
Hey, what's up, Kevin? I feel like that intro got cut short. Was that the updated version? Was that the remix?
That
Were
might
you
have been the
just like,
remix. It might have been. I think we got AI. I'm not sure what happened. It is different.
or it might have been Riverside just freaking out because we tried to do this yesterday. Today's Wednesday. We usually record on Tuesday. We jump on and we just got the spinning pinwheel of connecting, never connected. So I jumped onto Down Detector and there was a massive spike in reports of it just is not working. We were frantically texting each other and having that conversation of could be worse. Could have been interviewing Obama today, and he's just in the waiting room, or David Sachs, the AI version of
I
Obama, I
hear he's
guess.
at Liberty now. So,
Oh yeah.
yeah, he's leaving as AI czar. Yeah.
Oh, that's
But
right. I
we're
did
not
hear
a
that
news
too.
show. We're not a news show. Don't go there.
Yeah, yeah. Not a new show. Even though I did also find it amusing that we couldn't record yesterday. I'm like, it's one day. What could really happen? And then I walk out of the room, and my wife says, "Did you hear what happened with Anthropic and some kind of leak? And like their whole map file got posted publicly, and now everybody." Everybody knows their architecture. I'm like, what? I was just in this room for 5 minutes. What do you mean?
I'm impressed that your wife was like, "Hey, they disclosed their
It must have
architecture."
made the Apple News feed, like she just read it right off to me. Like, does any of that make sense to you? I'm like, sounds bad.
All right, for our audience, there was a leak at Anthropic, and the source code for Claude code was leaked. And given the vagaries of international copyright law, it is now out there. I honestly think that this is it's not a nothing burger. It's super embarrassing for Anthropic to be, whatever. $40 trillion company. Yeah, I'm kidding. But this massive company, and they let something like this happen. But for we, the users, this probably means that they're really great multi-agent architecture pieces are probably going to start accidentally working their way into all kinds of other tools.
Surprise, surprise. Yeah,
Surprise,
yeah,
surprise.
yeah. And you might see some other advances with other labs just kind of creeping up. I mean, so to be clear, this didn't have like weighting decisions in the models or anything like that, but there was some pretty important architecture stuff that did get leaked that, yeah, some real secret sauce in there for sure. So, listen, man, there's so much to go over. My head's kind of spinning. I had an all day AI day yesterday that was super frustrating that I would love to talk about. I was thinking about how one of my favorite podcasts ever is on Tim Ferriss's podcast. The first one he ever did was he had his buddy Kevin Rose on, and they just were talking about the things they were working on and just kind of bullshitting. And I just love being that fly on the wall. And I don't think I talked to you all week. I don't think I've talked to you since we did the last recording and we just had a couple of text exchanges and then all this stuff builds up. And I want this to be useful for people. And at the same time, I hope that other people, other listeners enjoy the whole fly on the wall concept of me just asking you a bunch of questions and telling you a bunch of weird shit that happened to me with AI this week. So let's get into it. Oh, you got a comment already. Okay.
I do want to add a caveat here that as far as orientation, since I have a decent idea of what you're going to talk about, it is really important that we explain some of the platform issues here. And we've talked about this before, but the basic chat era has been really disrupted. The idea that you can run projects and you can run custom GPTs and things like that, like great. There's a lot of productivity that can be gained there. But what's really opening the door to a lot of new functionality is a combination of the ease of development through things like a Claude code or OpenAI Codex or Lovable or Replit or whatever in vibe coding so you can build apps. And then we're really bridging a gap into productivity agents that are starting to operate like an quote agent should. And an agent should be able to take instructions and go off and do things on your behalf. And I very carefully avoided a lot of the open Claude stuff that's been going on over the last few months. Thank you, Eli, for taking the hit on that because I was right.
Well, now it's back. It's allegedly working out there for a lot of people. I don't know.
Well, in any case, it's still a little bit fiddly. But meantime, you have things like Claude Cowork that have really snapped into place. And it's important to understand the difference that you can work within an LLM, Claude, OpenAI, whatever you want on a project basis and chat with it and do things and connect to things. I think that that is something that's a little bit underrated as far as the ability to just control your HubSpot or your ClickUp
For
from
sure.
your browser. That's really great. You can build little things. They might be durable, like you might be building your own SaaS or your own solution or something you just need for the afternoon in Claude Code. That's great. But then you have these operators in Claude Cowork, which are turning out to be surprisingly useful. So there you go, setting the stage.
There you go. That was one of the things. It's 100 things I want to talk about, but sure, there's that. And yeah, I've built some stuff. It's been incredibly useful. And then I just did a repeat of OpenClaw. You know what I did? I heard the news that machine use was now in there. And let's talk about what machine use is for people. That's basically a feature. Okay, so inside of Cowork, these little utilities that you can spin up pretty easily just through conversational prompts really running in the background. In other words, I can still be on my computer doing what I'm doing. And then this little task that I created is now running in parallel. And I can look over at my other monitor and I can watch it work and say, wow, what a good AI. You're doing all this stuff for me while I do other work. Computer use is different. Computer use actually takes over the input devices of your machine. And so you're watching your cursor move around your screen inside of a browser or a tool, clicking into a field, typing for you. It's kind of spooky. It's a ghost using your machine. What you can't do is use your machine while that is happening, right? Now,
Yes.
why would you ever want to do that, right? Okay, let's throw out a couple use cases. Inside of Cowork, there are all these different tools you can call. There are Chrome extensions you can enable so that it can do work inside of your browser, which is super, super helpful. But, it doesn't do everything. For example, let's say that in your browser, one of the tasks that you wanted to complete was you wanted to download an image file and then upload it somewhere else. And it's just the kind of clicking and pixel pushing tedium that you want to avoid that AI should handle by now. That's a really good use case for something like computer use, where it can go in and do something like that. Where if it just has domain over your Chrome browser, it gets tripped up with that kind of stuff. Or maybe you even have an app that you want to launch that is native to your OS and you want to take something from that app and put it into your browser, vice versa. Again, really good. So, a lot of these tasks that I created in Cowork are what's the word that AI always uses? Brittle. They're brittle. And I love that word. And it always makes sure to bring it up whenever anything breaks. It says, well, this is kind of a brittle workflow, meaning that it'll stop for no reason. I have to nudge it to keep going. It'll just end the session without any explanation. It'll ask for permissions randomly, even though I already gave it permission to do everything, right? So as I was talking to Claude with this new feature, it said, wow, I don't think you want to just go with computer use because it uses a lot of tokens. And that's something else we're going to talk about. But it will burn through tokens because every time it's doing something on your computer, it's essentially taking a screenshot and then reading that screenshot. Think about when you upload an image into one of these image generators and say, hey, make me on this roller coaster, or whatever it is. It's looking at that image. It might be reading text. It's doing all this stuff, and that consumes a lot of tokens. Well, it's just doing that on repeat with computer use, right? So it's very, very token thirsty when you do that. But it suggested this hybrid approach, which I thought, okay, that sounds reasonable. Let's rewrite a bunch of these files with the instructions to when you get to a certain stage, now use my computer and we'll see if it makes it less brittle, right? I won't have to babysit it as much. Well, Kevin, I'll tell you what it did. It broke everything. I mean, it flat out destroyed all of the other skills that I had put together. It started doing weird stuff. It wouldn't read files anymore that were in the same directory that I gave it access to before, because now all of a sudden it was reading them as Google Docs and not .md files. I mean, it was awful. To make a long story even longer, I'll just wrap this up by saying I think I lost about 5 hours yesterday of where I came out of this with the same lesson I came out with OpenClaw, which is just let it bake a little longer in the oven. Like just let this stuff mature a little bit before you get to it. It's so hard for me to not get excited, Kevin. I hear an announcement like that and I'm like, because this was big news last week, right? I know we're not a news show, but this really is applicable about how AI gets used at work, right? Computer use in all the other models, I'm having a little breakup with OpenAI right now, so I won't speak to that. Maybe, I don't know if you've tried it, but back in the day with OpenAI, you had computer use with their dedicated AI browser, Atlas, and it was awful. It just got tripped up. It was super slow. It also burned through tokens. I just didn't find any utility out of it. Google has computer use now, but it's only through their developer API. It's not really for people who just want to open this up and like give it a try, right? You've got to really kind of be a developer to get this going. Claude was really the only game in town that was like, hey, computer use is here, and any of you guys can give it a try. And that's exciting. So I tried it, and it was brutal. It was absolutely brutal. That was my entire day yesterday.
So the
It was
first comment I have is you just said back in the day when Atlas launched. I just did a quick look. The Atlas browser launched 5 months ago.
doesn't seem like 5 years. I mean, that feels like forever ago.
It does feel like 5
Like
years.
when's the last time you even muttered the word Atlas, right? Like,
You know what? I did use it for something a couple of weeks ago. I forget what, but it does actually, it works, and it doesn't run out of tokens as fast as Claude does. With the play that I feel that Claude is making, that I'm finding to be a little bit hard to grapple with from just I don't know, mental model perspective, is you can do so much more within this odd environment of a chat than you've ever been able to do before. And centralizing your activities in either the browser chat or in the desktop chat or something like that, and then being able to trigger off different things that happen. And for clarification, most of the things you're talking about, you can't do through the browser. You need to do through the desktop app, which is fine, but it's a
correct.
very different like user environment. So in my case, I've gone full on in integrating ClickUp, HubSpot, Slack, all into Claude.
Mhm.
And then I've run co-work tasks that do things like they look at my calendar and they look ahead and try and find like speaking events, but the speaking event doesn't have a planning event before it. And then it suggests, oh, we should create a ClickUp task. And then it's great. I can create all of these tasks. I can do all this matrix management type stuff, but there's no proactivity to it because it's a chat. So you basically have to know to go to the chat to access all of that gold that you're creating. So now I'm finding myself doing these sort of weird workarounds where I'm creating like an event in Slack that basically says, now's the time of the day where you need to run that browser chat so
Have
that you
you
can.
have you used the scheduler inside of Cowork?
Well, yes, but
Okay.
it doesn't actually trigger the new chat. It will run the scheduler behind the scenes and it will do things, but
It does so it does trigger a new chat. Like it basically starts a new thread. And what ends up happening is you're just watching once you kick it off, like once that timer actually goes off, you can find this really kind of hard to locate drop down carrot and you can see all the whole history of that everything that's ever run in that task. You can click on it and you're watching it think and at any point you can jump in and say something. So I'm doing a lot of content marketing stuff right now. And in spite of my best efforts to make it never, ever, ever, ever use M dashes, it still does it occasionally. Sometimes it catches it, sometimes it doesn't. And so I'll pause it and say, hey, buddy, M dash again. How can we make this never happen? Sorry, my bad. Is it okay if I continue? Yes, go ahead, right? So you can continue that chat. And what's really cool about that thread as well, those instructions that you have for that task, if those are living on your machine somewhere and you've given it access to that folder on your machine, when you make that pause, you can say, maybe you didn't have the rule about M dashes and it just started putting them after every word and every sentence. You could say, hey, by the way, could we add something to the instructions right now so that that never happens again or make it important or prioritize it? And it'll write on that file too. So you do have that chat, like when you
it's
start the
different though.
schedule.
I get what you're saying, but if you're trying to do like work sessions, so if I'm doing like deep project management work, that
Right.
is different from cronning up an action in cowork that it like looks at the day, and cowork is probably not the right place for me to interact with that because it sits aside from the rest of my Claude memory. So operating through the browser, at least in the second, you can get much more depth of interaction. So again, I'm not trying to run the cron. I'm
Right.
trying to have a deep conversation about whatever that project is that I'm building and the
Okay.
dependencies and things like that on the other side. Other
Okay.
side note, do you know who uses M dashes? The New York Times. Do you
And
know who
lawyers.
else
Lots
uses
of
M
lawyers.
dashes? My wife.
I was going to say lawyers, like
My wife,
love
who is
M
a
dash.
lawyer, and
They
she
just every other, half sentence is an M dash. It's
it's an
crazy.
M dash, and
This is what they
she
taught
sent
you
me
at law
something.
school.
She sent me a note, and I said, "I know you don't use much AI, but this really looks like AI. It's just full of M dashes." And she just paused, and she realized, well, everybody's going to think I'm using AI to
Dude, I had
write.
this exact conversation with another litigator. She's like, "No, that wasn't AI, that was me." I'm like, bullshit. She's like, "No, I use M dashes all the time." Okay, back to this cowork thing though. So one of the things that's happening probably with every model right now, but I spend most of my time in Claude, is that every other time I log in, there's another pop-up that says, "Hey, now you can do this. Would you like to?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Okay, go for it." And one of them was memory sharing across threads and projects and everything. Then it gives me a little example of things that we've talked about. And I'm like, cool. I really don't know where all these connectors have gone, but I trust you. So I don't know, maybe like co-work tasks and these separate threads that you're having in different conversations and projects might already be sharing or
The
start to be
point
sharing.
is, it's still developing as far as what that user experience is going to be. And this is part of where the whole SaaS apocalypse thing is coming from. That I haven't needed to go into ClickUp in weeks. I haven't needed to go into HubSpot in weeks because I'm able to do what I need to do from a reporting and a follow up perspective outside of that. And it's making those platforms, although very well structured for what they do, as far as project data and as far as sales data, it's basically just a database for me at this point. And I don't really see a world, given my workflow, where I need to do that so much. I've sort of queried different people on my team, and there are plenty of people who actually like going into ClickUp and seeing like, hey, this is my regimented day. These are
Sure.
the things that I need to get done, and I'm going to charge through that. The people who are doing things that are a little bit more matrix, though, they want to see things from a lot of different parts of the organization so they can understand the relevance of what they're doing. And wish you luck doing that, particularly on a cheap ClickUp plan, of being able to see across all of that and also have the context
Yeah.
of your broader chats and the memory and et cetera.
Yeah.
But it's super eye-opening, and it's like feels like a complete superpower that is still half-baked because I I there's no like go-to
It's
clear
totally half baked.
interface.
Yeah, it's totally half baked. I've gotten pretty good with navigating the interface and making it useful for me. Not intuitive. This stuff drops so frequently as well. There's not really any good documentation anywhere. So you just have to get in there and use it. And we've talked about this before as well. The model training itself is also dated versus how fast these things come out. So it's not like you can do what you usually do, which is just ask the model, unless you have it just go scrub through a bunch of Reddit threads and find the most recent things and just random stories of things people have tried. That's what I usually do as a starting point.
Okay, so this is a great audience takeaway. If you want to explore with Claude Cowork and you want to do something that's going to amplify your Claude Cowork, I'm going to give a nod to one of our listeners who gave me this tip. But what he did is he built a Cowork cron task that goes out and it finds the latest and most interesting uses of Claude Cowork in his particular vertical and then pastes it in Slack. So once a day, it goes out there, it finds like marketing tailored or finance tailored, like co-work actions that other people are sharing, and it dumps it right in Slack with a link, and you can just super easily scan down it and be like, oh, that's really interesting, maybe I should explore that one. And it will very quickly lead you to developing a bunch of other little co-work actions that you can do as well.
Yeah, that's cool. Another little tip I found that was super helpful is that say that you do build one of these tasks, and I think maybe just a couple days ago they also dropped that you could reference one of your Claude projects for context for that task that you build, which is also super helpful if you have a bunch of history and other attachments and files or MD whatever instructions in there. So you can pull that in now too. But say that you just want to run this ad hoc. Like maybe you do want to grab the connector to ClickUp and say, what is all the stuff I have due this week? But then you also wanted to hit your Google Calendar and say, like, what are the most important meetings I have this week? And do I have any emails that really need attention? Those three things, right? But there's not like a specific time of the day that you want it. You just want to do that manually. You can still create that on a schedule. you just don't give it a time and day, right? And now when you go to schedule, you have all these different tasks that you made. They're all organized kind of nicely. And by nicely, I mean it's just a long list of all the stuff you made. You can't really organize it, but at least it's under one tab. And then you can just go and manually hit play and it'll run that task. And that's what I was doing, Kevin, for the last few weeks when I made a pretty complex marketing task that I wanted to run every morning. Then I started just letting it run by itself. Another note here about both co-work or computer use or any of these things that are getting really fancy. Your machine has to be awake and running for you to use these, right? It's not like it's just happening out in the ether in a cloud somewhere. It is on your machine. And if your machine is asleep, it's not going to just automatically wake up, right? So for all those people who don't love going into their terminal, it's not that scary. You can go in your terminal, you can ask Claude for a quick command that wakes up your machine right before your task run. It's very, very simple. It's very robust. So I started doing that, right? I did that for about a week and I was kind of watching it work on the side while I did my work. And I'm like, God, it's doing a really good job. So yesterday, Kevin, I decided to just let the robot do its thing. And I got up. I was at the gym at 6 a.m. It had been weeks because I've been babysitting the stupid task. I came back and I was like so excited to see what it had done. It choked in the first like 15 seconds. It just stopped running. I have no idea why. This was a content marketing task. And so when I gave it its little nudge to be like, hey, and this is what typically happens, Kevin, is I'll say like, I noticed you stopped. Was there a problem? Going on to the next step. Like it doesn't even tell me
Nothing
what
to
the
see
problem
here.
was. Like nothing to see here, right? It doesn't look like anything to me. And so it starts to do that. And it looks at this piece of content I had posted that it was supposed to be working on 3 hours ago. I'm now back, dropped my kids off at school, the whole nine. It does its first screenshot and says, oh my gosh, your post is going viral. Look at all these comments. I'm like, no, it's not. It's 3 hours old. You completely dropped the ball. So yeah, very brittle, as it would like to say, very, very brittle. So that brings up another thing I want to add to this too, is this feature called Dispatch. And we had a very quick text exchange about this yesterday. Have you played around with Dispatch much at all?
Yes. So Dispatch is supposed to be sort of a connection to your phone, such that you can continue to run Claude Code actions or Claude co-work actions from your phone and sort of nudge it along when it gets stuck. There's just a minor setup process as far as basically linking the two accounts, and you're supposed to be off to the races. And I mean supposed to be off the races because mine is still sitting on its like intro screen because I couldn't get it to work. Okay. And I have to admit, I walked away. It's like, Eli will figure this out.
The speed of AI, Kevin, yesterday, it did nothing for me. It would just like, I'd see the read receipts when I'd send it a message. I'm like, hello, read, no reply. I'm like, cool, this just doesn't work. I gave it one more try later on when I was out and I was running a task. And I said, hey, just want to check in on this task that's running. And it said, oh, it's about 40% done. Da, 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 da. These are the results. I'm like, cool, that's awesome. So we had been talking about all these little fun apps we've been vibe coding to scratch our own itch and just like, hey, this personal productivity thing or this thing or this thing. You can have versions of that where you don't have to deal with hosting or really much developer complexity whatsoever inside something like Cowork. And having Dispatch, if it works the way that it's supposed to, is actually kind of cool. So I started actually right before we started recording, I started building this thing that was just like a morning report that was in Cowork that would go and get me all my analytics from my wearable, and it would get my Google Calendar and my email. And another little tip here, you know, all the connectors you were talking about and how you connect it to ClickUp. ClickUp has a published connector, which is great, and it's really robust. These MCP connectors, which you can basically just ask Claude about, like if one exists for these different products, are widely out there. So for example, I use a productivity tool called Todoist. It's great. And you get a lot of mileage out of the free plan. But there was no connector inside that list of different apps in Claude, but there is an MCP connector. It just gives you a link, you paste it in, you put in your log creds, boom, you're off to the races. You have all those permissions and all those data points flowing through. So that's amazing. So, you know, I added that. So basically now with Dispatch, if I wake up in the morning, I could just say, hey, send me the report from the morning dossier, whatever you want to call it. And then boom, Dispatch just gives you all the results. And so you kind of have this mini app, very similar to the way a lot of people were using OpenCloud with Telegram, where you're just having this kind of conversation through your mobile device. with something that's doing a bunch of work off on the side. So I like that because I think it's really approachable for more people than OpenClaw was, or trying to vibe code your own app and then figure out hosting and deployment and all that kind of fun stuff. So, I mean, that's pretty cool.
I mean, I think that's how I was using that. That's how I've been using Slack. Is I use a Slack connector, and it does get a little bit janky to like respond in Slack and makes things happen elsewhere. That's sort of a work in
Yeah.
process. But yeah, being able to pull in a whole bunch of different stuff that way is pretty cool. I think I did tell you that I use an Aura ring, and I've been really sort of underwhelmed with the like proactivity of the data. That
Yeah.
okay, cool. I didn't sleep again. Tell me something I don't know.
My
But trying to like,
my is 5%. I know, buddy. It's been like that for a month.
it doesn't even flash up. Maybe you should seek attention.
Yeah. Maybe you
But
should
it
change
just
your
sort of
lifestyle.
sits there and passively does its thing, and it's not my MO to get in there and like update it with what did I eat today and whatever. So just sort of out of curiosity, I built a co-work task. So this is a little off dispatch, but I built a co-work task that I connected to Aura, which by the way, I had to set up like a developer account, but fine, that's a
Yeah.
few clicks, no big deal to do that. And then I thought, well, okay, what environmentally might be affecting the rest of my world? And I connected it to my calendar, and I connected it to my email, and I connected it to my Slack. So it could see when I was traveling, it could see sort of like the density of meetings that I was having. And now it had more context. And then it pastes that in Slack. It runs at whatever, 8 o'clock in the morning. And then it creates a message in Slack that talks about all of these different pieces and actually is giving me proactive feedback that Aura, which has raised only $900 million, has never really cracked. And here, like literally while eating a breakfast sandwich, I like just sort of connected the dots, and I made it usable in a way that frankly it wasn't that usable to me before.
Totally. I'm going to drop your favorite word, the knowledge graph. The knowledge graph, right? It doesn't only exist in the office, it exists in your life, right? So you might have a wearable that's giving you all this information in a silo, but where's the context for the rest of your life, right? Like, did you have a massive calendar load that day? Do you have 3,000 unread emails sitting in your inbox and Slack messages and all these other things? It can pull all that data together and then wrap it up in a story that's contextual to you and what's happening in this moment and might be helpful, right? One thing I have mine do, which I love, we're both fans of the bicycle, and I'm got a little bicycle story for you coming up, but we're also in Utah, and it was full on spring bordering on summer 3 days ago. And it's probably snowing where you are, Kevin, right now. It's dumping rain down here, right? Not the best day to be out on a bicycle. Guess who knows that? The weather widget that this thing calls in. And so it not only looks at my recovery, I've got the Whoop instead of the Aura, but it'll say, oh, hey, you're in the green today. It looks like you can make a good effort. And guess what? The sun is shining. And I see on your Google Calendar that you have a nice hour and a half block in the afternoon. I'm going to schedule a ride for you right there. And it'll actually write to my Google Calendar, schedule the ride for me based on my recovery and the weather, right? So pulling all this context in, really wrapping in the entire knowledge graph of all the things happening in your life to do something useful for you. Right. That to me, what a great use of AI. I think that's a huge unlock. I love it.
Yeah. And it's something that Whoop would never be able to do. Like it's so far out of their scope. It lends itself some questions about some of how their business model is going to work at the end of the day, because I now have no reason to go to the Aura app ever.
No,
It's answering the
no.
questions now. As I come up with new questions, I might add new data sources to it. I don't like its interface very much, so maybe I want to create some little logging app or something like that I would use that suits the way that I like to operate. Or more likely, start a Claude chat and say, hey, update my Aura record with these behaviors that I know I did yesterday. I went on
Yeah.
well, it knows that I went on a really long mountain bike ride because it already is connected to Apple Health, or it's connected to Strava or something like that. So it already
But
has that.
Strava too. Yeah. Strava is another great connector, right? Like
Yeah.
it's so good. I will raise you one. I'll put another connector in there. So I think there's a lot of value in journaling. I don't do it very often, or if I haven't historically. I can barely hold a pen anymore because I've been on a keyboard so many years. I know that's the best way to journal. I'm like, okay, I'll use a digital one. I'll type. Now with the AI powered dictation stuff like Whisperflow that we've talked about ad nauseum, I journal every day because I can just take 5 minutes, pick up my phone, journal into the app, and it knows where I am. I can add photos to remember it. And guess what? That digital journal has an API key as well, right? So I can connect that into this. And so, once again, more context. So, when it pulls up my sleep analytics, I might have journaled saying, hey, I've had insomnia for 2 weeks and I'm going to try 50 milligrams of trazodone because I'm desperate. And it might say, hey, guess what? You got a lot more aggregate sleep, but your deep sleep was reduced by 30% over a 30-day average. Very interesting because you took trazodone, and it pulled that in from my journal. Right. So, just again, like this knowledge graph of pulling in all these little stories from your life and then making sense of it and giving you useful insights to move forward. Yeah. Right. And where does that branch out to? All sorts of areas, right? Healthcare, especially, you know,
So my first note is I did just cross over 1 million words dictated in Whisperflow. So yay me. And I'd been
wow.
using Super Whisperer for a few months before then. So that's roughly 27,000 words a week that I dictate at this point. And I get really bent out of shape when I have to type. I'm like a cat on water. Like,
Especially on a phone, man, especially on a phone, right? Like, I'm like, "These thumbs aren't meant for a touch
so
screen."
that's part of why I brought it up. That unfortunately, dear listeners, if we've convinced you to use Whisperflow, our friends in Cupertino at Apple are making everybody's life a little bit more difficult. There's an update that's being pushed in the next couple of weeks that is going to make it a little bit more janky for you. I think I've said janky 3 times today.
Right.
That's sort of the state. I think we're in a janky state of affairs with a lot of this stuff. It's going to make it harder for you to move between different keyboards if you're using Whisperflow on your
Oh, no,
phone.
really?
Yeah,
I didn't hear
and
that.
it may be a precursor to them sort of getting their Siri house in order.
Right, which is that's also in motion, you
There's
know?
that because
Yeah,
it
OpenAI no longer has the exclusive, and you'll be able to route to other models, allegedly. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
and as much as I'm affectionate to Whisperflow, and there are also, by the way, so productivity and, AI at work stuff, this app is great, at least on a Mac. I think that there's a PC version now too. You just hit function and you talk to it, or on your phone, you trigger it in a keyboard and you can do it. But that's only sort of three-quarters of its value. The other quarter is you can actually do verbal shortcuts on it. Like if I say paste tidycal, it will paste my calendar link into whatever I'm doing.
My LinkedIn profile,
My
like
LinkedIn
yeah.
profile. You can do entire snippets. Honey, I'm
Intro
late
tag.
again. I'm
That's one,
totally
like, I always
not.
get these emails, "Hey, I wanna introduce you to so and so." The reply is always the same, "Hey, great to meet you. Moving you to BCC to save your inbox, Mike.
Yep.
Here's my calendar." I'm like, "The same damn email," right? You could just say, "Intro email," right? And then boom, whole thing just pops up.
Yep. And I've had those as text replacements on Mac for years. So
Same.
I have probably 100 of them that are out there, and I've slowly just migrated them over. The other note I'll have on Whisperflow, and again, we have no connection to Whisperflow. It is just a good platform.
If
There
you're
are other
listening,
ones out there.
Whisperflow, San Francisco sponsor, thank you. Okay,
Yes,
go
yes,
ahead,
thank
Kevin.
you. By all means, you should be sponsoring us, even if I just toss shade at you for falling victim to Apple. You do have to train it, and a little bit. I just have a good friend of mine who I have hooked on it, but it's clearly not trained on any of like the vocabulary. So anytime I assume he was saying OpenClaw, it would correct it to either Claude or OpenAI, which makes all of his messages like make no sense at all. So
Yeah.
you do need to do some curation of it, and you do need to review the results because it will do some pretty weird things that are occasionally kind of embarrassing.
Yeah. True, true. I mean, it's not perfect, but my god, is it an unlock. Like, you
Oh
just
my gosh.
you don't really realize until you can't use it for some reason if you're in an incredibly loud environment, even if you're just whispering right into the mic of a corded headset. Sometimes it's just too much or wind noise, whatever it might be, and you have to go back and type on that damn phone. Or if, I don't know, something weird happens, you have to type on your keyboard. Oh, yeah. If you're on a Zoom call you don't want to be on and you're messaging a friend and you can't really talk, you're typing on your keyboard, you're like, oh yeah, these big fat fingers used to do all this stuff that they've already forgotten because it's so much faster to talk. What is it, like 4 times faster to just
Well,
say
so
something than to type something on
I'm a
average?
slow typist. I've never been a great
Okay,
typist, so I can only
you're 10
type it.
times faster
So
because you're a great talker, Kevin.
I'm a great talker. Yeah, so I could, I type at whatever 50 words a minute, and I can dictate at a comfortable 175 a minute. And it's not just the speed. by the way. This is something that I talk about now when I'm doing trainings. The unlock is actually the density of the data. That the LLMs want more information and more context, not just because they want to burn up your tokens, but because they can give you better responses. And some of the really cool on the ground things that we've been building or we've been seeing out there are on to the ground, like verbal interfaces with people who are generally reluctant to like get back in their truck and update things.
Totally.
They will do an oral interview, but they won't want to type it. And if they did type it, they'd only type like 5 or 6 words, right? But if they talk and you can incentivize them in the right way to talk, they may speak 50, 100, 250 words. And that gives the LLM downstream so much more that it can chew on as far as processing that knowledge graph that we're after, as far as getting the information from the right sources and getting it to the right destinations at the right time.
Yeah.
So come to my TED talk about the future of oral communication for sure. Like this is so obsessed with us bridging back to a culture of oral communication. It's really exciting.
I totally agree. I always kind of think in these evolutionary biology terms, right? Of where are the instances in our life where we're so far removed from how we evolved that it's just hurting your brain and your well being and your mental health and everything else. And I do believe that staring into this little box of lights for 15 hours in a row is one of those things. But as far as just the way that we communicate with these boxes of light, like that's a win to me if I can be talking instead of just typing and staring at the screen. I mean, I'll use that dictation and look out the window. I'll just like walk away and look out the window and kind of move around. It just feels a lot more natural. So I totally agree with that. We kind of went off track from this computer use. I just had a couple questions for you. The first really is that I mean, in my experience of something that was very, very early and having just a complete failure, I didn't even talk about like what this awful failure was, man. This was so bad. It not only broke everything that I had built previously until I unpeeled all those instructions, but the task itself, man, was just one of those. I'm only going to save a little bit of time, but now I've got this huge sunk cost of trying to build it. So I really want to make it work. And I should have just waved the white flag. I should have given up, but I kept going. So the use case was we used Beehive for a newsletter platform for one company, and it's got an awful UX. Like it's awful. Like I forget how to find all the things
There goes that
every like
sponsor.
seven. Yeah, there goes that sponsor. I don't care. I'm so mad at them right now, Kevin. Like I really don't care. I'll tell you what, I'm so mad at them. So I was like, oh, this is a great use for something where they have an API, which means that the machine can just kind of push all this data in the background for the most part, and it'll be fast and not use very many tokens. But that damn image upload, right? In ClickUp, I have the newsletter copy, I have the image associated with it, and then that's where it trips up. So I'd either have to manually go add the image to the newsletter that gets scheduled, or maybe I could let the computer use do that part for me, like this hybrid version. I'm like, great use case, let me do it. 4 hours later, when it still wasn't working for something so damn simple and really only takes me 10 minutes per newsletter to do it the most, I finally took one of the error messages, pasted it back into Claude and said, what the F is going on, buddy? It's like its API is pull only, meaning it can only read information from your newsletter platform. If you want to actually push a newsletter and schedule it, that's the enterprise plan. Never mind that you're already paying over $100 a month for under 10,000 subscribers to use this platform, but we're going to throttle your API. That's why I hate you right now, Beehive. Thank you very much. Unless you call one of our sales reps to get on this enterprise plan where you can actually just use an automation tool to publish the newsletter, which is who cares? Like, why would they care? That's where it all fell apart. Like, just absolutely brutal. Absolutely brutal. So, listen, that's the end of my story. Yeah, and we won't be getting any sponsors from Beehive soon, probably, but I don't care.
But
I'm already
okay,
getting
so
all my
this
money.
plays into the platform friction, right? Like what Beehive does, the email sending part is complicated, but you can
Right.
solve email sending in a bunch of different ways. Like I'm not going to tell anybody they should go out there and create their own ESP
Not
anytime
easy.
soon, but the Beehive layer that sits on top of it and does like the newsletter organization, I'm not going to say that's trivial to recreate, but it's kind of trivial to recreate.
And somebody
And
could do it a hell of a lot better than it's being done.
so it actually lends itself to an observation that GitHub, where all these the code repositories are out there, has a very thriving sharing based economy. And I just saw something drop last week. I think maybe it was called Section, and it was a really robust Salesforce knockoff. And it's like
Mm,
a bunch of people spend a bunch of time
yeah.
trying to figure out how to build their own Dreamweenie version of Salesforce. And then they said, "Hey, world, have it.
Yeah.
Out you go." All like
Open source.
whatever million lines of code it is. And that probably isn't a problem for Salesforce necessarily, but that actually might be a problem for Zoho or Pipedrive or even HubSpot.
Totally.
At stuff like that is easy to deploy because once you have the code, now even mere mortals can make it their own and be like, "Oh, but I want the CRM to do this stuff that has to do with fisheries or whatever the heck it is." But you have the base to work with that's probably really well designed. And now you can bolt on the features that you want. And it wouldn't surprise me if somebody has already created some like Beehive type platform. So there is a sharing economy going on. And sometimes you can find things out there that are in public domain. Major caveat, that's also a way to open yourself to all kinds of interesting like
Security.
security issues. So trust but verify.
Lots of malware hidden in different code bases, Trojan horses where you're like, oh, this is amazing. Just kidding. It's going to go now. Try to get all my credit card numbers. And I mean, there have been all sorts of horror stories. So yeah, tread very lightly on that one. So as we digress upon another digression and another digression, what I was getting to is like super, super early. But I feel like this got a lot of press, right? So as it applies to AI at work, this idea of computer use. What do you think? Practical applications, more hype than utility right now, too early to tell? I mean, because it really does kind of move out of this. Like, if you think about the implementations at work, it's no longer humans that are basically using AI as a force multiplier for their own workflows, but they're almost babysitting a machine right now that is doing its own thing, right? Like, I mean, when the OpenClaw thing started, it was advised for everybody to go get a Mac Mini to run this on because it was so just off doing wild things that you didn't want it to have access to your daily driver, to your machine that you normally worked on. And this is kind of in that same genre in regards to like, you can't use that computer if this is being used. So at work, does that mean there is a near future of people babysitting a bunch of machines that are just having things happen on them? Like, hey, guys, this is my team. This is my Mac Mini. This is my iMac. This is my Dell machine, right? And they're all kind of doing their own thing, working on their own projects? Or is that still like days or weeks away in AI timelines? Like, what do you think about that? And then, of course, like all the security risks that come in with something like that too, right? It's a whole other can of worms.
We talked about this on a previous show, but a workflow hack is to record whatever you're doing in a screen recording and then develop the workflow based on whatever that is.
Yeah,
If that process, and use Gemini just for completeness, so you can dump in a video that's up to an hour into Gemini and it will do like a play by play of everything that's going on in it. The same is probably true for how you would inject computer use into that. So if browser, then, or if a tool, then you can invoke this and determine whether or not the juice is worth the squeeze, because it
right.
can be kind of time consuming. And as you mentioned earlier, it taking over your computer is a bit of a pain.
That machine is no I asked, I said, "Hey, what if this is running on some cron job and it uses the computer and I'm doing something else? Who wins? Like, who gets control of the cursor and the keyboard? Like, how does that work?" And the reply from Claude was like, "Oh, it's gonna be a complete shit show. It's gonna and the task is gonna fall apart, like, da, 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 da." So, it really is is this a future of these are dedicated machines that would do the roles of different employees?
Well, it's that training part where they're minding it. I mean, you're basically, depending on what your role is, if your role completely consists of these like kind of mindless clicking tasks, I mean, that's obviously is going to end up replaced. In other cases, once it has a high level of trust where you're pretty sure it's going to
Yeah,
go do its things, I think about things like small business insurance filings and like forms, and
totally.
it already knows
Document processing, yeah,
all of this stuff about me, and it's just endlessly frustrating to deal with somebody's like craptastic like PDF form. Part of me just wants to reinvent it for them and be
right,
like, here's the data, like fix your stupid form and
yeah.
move on. I actually used it this morning. One utility, and this browser based computer use and machine use, by the way, are sort of different
Very
things.
different. Yeah,
So I tend to use browser. I haven't done a lot with machine. Machine can control your entire machine and it can move things around. I've used it a few times, but I do use browser pretty frequently. And one of the unlocks for browser is it lets you do things that receiving sites maybe not like super into. I'm not doing anything nefarious, but like I needed to do background research on somebody on LinkedIn, and you're not going to be able to just point the LLM to LinkedIn and say, hey, like, scrape all this information about them. But you can use computer to do that, and it will go to LinkedIn. It's going to come from your IP address. So LinkedIn doesn't really want to shut you down. I know that some people are doing some like really wild stuff with like commenting and things like that,
I've heard
but
stories.
a lot of stories, but you can do basic things like that that otherwise would have been
You can do
impossible.
browser for that too. Like you could
Yeah.
do either or. I mean, computer use really is like if a browser has to talk to a native app or if it has to download a file and then upload that file. I mean, that's really the only strong computer use things. Filling out forms as well. Computer use will do that a bit better than the browser use. But I don't know. I'll give you 3 categories: nothing burger, too early to tell, or this is the future. Like, what would you lean towards in those 3 categories with computer use? Browser use to me already feels super robust. And here's another caveat. I'll throw out both of those that they have in common: super slow, super token hungry. A computer use even more token hungry than browser use. Both of them definitely like at least half the speed of a human, but hey, you can have it doing it while you sleep, right? Thanks for listening. If you'd like to send us a question to answer on the show, email me at elijah@spark6.com. That is SPARK, the number 6.com, or Kevin@ascendlabs.ai. To learn more about AI strategy and training for your business, visit Kevin's company, Ascend AI Labs, at ascendlabs.ai. And to learn more about design and development of custom AI solutions, visit my agency at spark6.com. You can also sign up for my free newsletter, AI Framework Friday, by visiting spark6.com/newsletter.